and welcome to Heritage Kitchener's June meeting. I just have these comments. When I opened my agenda, I wondered if our heritage planning staff intended to compete with the Russian author Tolstoy and his book, War and Peace. And I'm not referring to the content, but the number of pages in our agenda, which is now over 900. And I just have to express that because the public sometimes wonder, and I know there will be those watching, they wonder, what is this Heritage Kitchener committee all about? And does it just do, slap plaques on buildings, that kind of thing? Well, no, there's a lot of reading, and in particular this one. So I'm sorry you didn't make it, but I'm glad you didn't make it too. Tolstoy's book is 1,386 pages. Our agenda today consists mainly of 3 items. One, the heritage permits and heritage property designation, the awards for heritage properties, and that is the Mike and Pat Wagner Heritage Awards. And then our third one is the Bill 23, where we are reviewing the City of Kitchener's Municipal Heritage Register of Heritage Buildings. So without further ado, we're going to begin. And I have to ask, is there anyone who has a pecuniary interest? Seeing none, we'll now move to our discussion items. And the first one has to do with the notice of intention to designate 97 Victoria Street North under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act. Diksha Chowdhury, our heritage planner, will make a brief presentation and give the overview. Members, please hold your questions. And then if the applicant is here, I know there's a rep here, wishing to speak, we will ask them questions and continue on. So, Diksha, please begin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. While our presentation is loading, I just wanted to start by saying thank you to the members of the committee. I know this agenda in particular is really long and there are a lot of items in the agenda and reading, as you mentioned. We are cognizant of that and we recognize all the work that you're putting in and helping us, especially with Bill 23. So thank you for all that you do. So the first item on the agenda is the notice of intention to designate 97 Victoria Street North. This building has been recognized for its design, historical, and contextual value. As the committee might remember, this property is subject to an active site plan application. The owner intends to convert the building into an affordable housing project. This would require changes to the existing building, a 3rd-story addition, and a 1-story addition towards the rear of the building. That will be discussed during the next item. A draft heritage impact assessment was made a requirement of the site plan application, and that was presented to the committee at its February 7th, 2023 meeting. This building is currently listed as a non-designated property of cultural heritage value or interest. The HIA that was submitted confirmed that the building does have cultural heritage value. The site plan application has received conditional approval, and the designation of this building has made a condition to be fulfilled prior to full site plan approval. This building is a representative example of the industrial vernacular style of architecture. It is 2 stories in height with a symmetrical facade and a flat roof. There's a shaped parapet on the front facade. The side facade have shallow buttresses that define distinct bays throughout the facade. This building is of brick construction comprising of red, yellow, and beige brick. The bricks are different colors as there were additions that were made to the building after its original construction, but the later additions also do contribute in the design value of the building. The building is also located within the Warehouse District Cultural Heritage Landscape and is considered a gateway into the CHL, as it is the first property that you see when you enter the CHL. The building also has historical and associative contextual value. The historical value is related to the original owner, use, and the present owner as well. The building was built by William E. Mitchell of the Mitchell Button Company in circa 1927 and operated in Kitchener for nearly 55 years. By direct extension of the property's manufacturing use, this property is directly related to the theme of city's industrial expansion that occurred throughout the early 20th century. And ever since its construction, this building has always been used for commercial purposes. Presently, this building is being used by the Working Center, which has been providing social services to the community and is a vital part of our community as well since the mid-1980s. So just an overview of the heritage attributes that will be protected when the bylaw is passed. So this will cover all the elements related to the industrial vernacular architectural style. So the two-story height, the symmetrical northwest primary facade, the flat roof with the parapet, the brick construction, and the chimney, and all elements related to its contextual value as well. That is the end of my presentation. Staff are here for any questions you might have.
Thank you, Diksha. And I do see that we have the consultant for the project, Chris Uchiyama, and Joe Mancini, the shall we say, the owner of the Working Center here. And I don't know if you wish to say anything, or if the committee members have any questions for the applicants. Seeing none, I will turn back to Diksha. And are there any members for staff? Any questions for staff? Seeing none, we're going to move to the recommendation. It was resolved that pursuant to Section 29 of the Ontario Heritage Act, the clerk be directed to publish a notice of intention to designate the property municipally addressed as 97 Victoria Street North as being of cultural heritage value and interest. And who would move that, please? Ilona is a mover. All those in favor? Carried. And so it will now go to council for its heritage designation represented to council on June the 19th, 2023. Thank you. And now we're going to turn to our heritage permit application, HPA 2023-4008, 97 Victoria Street North, proposed third-story addition and existing building alterations. Diksha, could you provide a brief overview presentation, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the next item on the agenda are the alterations that are being proposed to facilitate the conversion of this building into an affordable housing project. Ideally, staff would have waited until council had approved the notice of intention to designate. However, with there being no HCAN council meetings being held in July, and due to the fact that this is an affordable housing project, the applicants have to meet certain stringent deadlines in order to receive funding, which is why you have this heritage permit in front of you today. In cases like this, Section 30, subsection 2 of the OHA gives the city interim control over any alterations, additions, etc. That is what is being applied here and will come into effect should the council approve the NOID. The approval of these permits was made a condition of site plan approval along with the designation of the property. So this permit primarily covers three things for the alterations to the existing building, which include the replacement of the 6/6 windows, which are original on the front facade, for a third-story addition on the existing building, and for the one-story addition towards the rear of the property. There are a couple of reasons why the windows need to be replaced. First, that the windows at the front of the building need to be replaced to meet net zero building requirements. Second, since a part of the building will be converted into residential units, for privacy and for each unit to have its own individual windows, the window design needs to be readjusted. Furthermore, as you can see in the rendering, the window sizes are a bit smaller. This is because the window systems need to be updated internally because the ceiling has to be dropped. However, the window openings will remain the same. At this time, no window design has been finalized, and staff are continuing to work with the applicant to finalize a more compatible window design for the front facade. Moving on to the third-story addition, it will be similar in height to the other 2 stories. This addition is proposed to be clad in metal paneling and will have a similar fenestration pattern as the other 2 stories. I just wanted to make a note that the color of the metal paneling in this rendering seems to be a bit darker than it actually will be. Staff are working with the applicant with regard to this. In order to create a visual buffer between the existing building and the addition, this addition is a little set back from the parapet with a narrow metal band in the middle so that the parapet remains prominent and the addition can be differentiated from the existing building. And then the 1-story addition is proposed to be constructed towards the rear of the building. It will be used as a dining hall and an outreach area, as you can see in the second rendering down at the bottom. All of these changes are necessary for the adaptive use of this building and to convert it into an affordable housing building. Staff continue to work with the applicant to fulfill other conditions of the site plan approval, which also include approval of the HIA and the conservation plan. As the chair mentioned, we have Joe Manzini, we have Adrian Bobechko, which is the planning consultant, and Chris Uchiyama, who is the heritage consultant with us, here to answer any questions that the committee might have with regards to this heritage permit application. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Diksha. And I'm going to ask, the delegation is here. And are there any questions for the delegation on the project or the information that Diksha has presented? Seeing none, then I'll go back to Diksha. And are there any questions for Diksha before we continue? Any questions? Seeing none, thank you. The recommendation in the staff report, it's resolved that pursuant to Section 30 and Section 33 of the Ontario Heritage Act, Heritage Permit Application 2023 IV-008 be approved to permit building alterations, a 3rd story and a 1-story rear addition to the subject property municipally addressed as 97 Victoria Street North, subject to the following conditions. 1, that the final building permit be reviewed and heritage clearance provided by heritage planning staff prior to the issuance of a building permit. 2, that the proposed window replacements for original front facade windows of the existing building be approved by heritage planning staff prior to installation. And so who would move that?
Through you, the chair, just before we progress, we did receive a presentation from the applicant. I'm not sure if they're still interested in presenting. You're okay? Okay, thank you.
May we proceed? All right, who would move this motion? Andrew, thank you very much. All those in favor? Carried. So with that, you may proceed. Good luck. And I wish you well on the windows. All right, number 4.3 on your agenda. We have a heritage permit application for 369 Frederick Street. This has to do with alterations and addition to the A.R. Gowdy Eventide home. Diksha, could you please present?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So next we have the heritage permit application for the addition and the alteration for a 4-story addition at 369 Frederick Street. The committee will remember that the notice of intention to designate this property was unanimously approved by HK at its April meeting and was also approved by Council at its April 17th, 2023 meeting. The notice was published on April 28th, 2023. The permit that we have today is to formalize the alterations proposed, and the designating bylaw will be going to Council at its next meeting. Just to remind the committee that this application has received conditional site plan approval, and we are working through site plan approval conditions at this point. And just to give a background to the committee, initially a site plan application was submitted to the city in 2017 for a 5-story freestanding retirement home and a 3-story addition to the existing building. That application was approved by the city in 2017. However, in March 2021, additional beds were awarded to People Care, due to which the height of the addition proposed had to be increased by 1 story. As a result, the applicant applied for a Stamp Plan A site plan application. Staff are now working through fulfilling conditions related to the Stamp Plan A application, which also included the designation of the existing building, and thus the need for this heritage permit. So as you can see, the permit is to permit a 4-story addition to the existing building. The addition will be clad in stucco, but in a different color to make it compatible but distinguishable from the existing building. These changes are necessary to facilitate the additional capacity needed to keep this building functioning as a long-term care home. The colors of the addition will also be similar so that it is compatible but can be distinguishable from the existing building. To facilitate and integrate the proposed addition, 3 main changes to the existing buildings are proposed. The first, that the entrance canopy has to be shortened. The location of the canopy has been highlighted in the yellow box that you see before you. The canopy has been identified as a heritage attribute, but to offset any negative impacts, most of the canopy is being retained along with its overhanging eaves and will maintain its overall symmetry. Next, a stair tower curtain wall on the western side of the building needs to be modified in order to accommodate an elevator, and the location of that stair tower has been highlighted in the green box. A portion of the stair tower will be removed, with a portion being moved towards the front of the building, and a new curtain wall tower will be built to match the existing. Third, that a portion of the curtain wall, also on the western side of the building, will be relocated as an interior feature, as highlighted in the red box, with only a portion of that curtain wall being visible from the internal courtyard once the addition has been built. So just to give you a bit more context, these are the schematic drawings of the canopy. That is the first sort of diagram you see in front of you, and the stair tower to be modified. You can see in the second schematic that the curtain wall will move forward and a new curtain wall will be built to match the existing. Although these changes do modify the heritage attributes, they do not have an adverse negative impact, and the cultural heritage value of the property will not be affected by these changes. I also wanted to note that because this addition modifies the building, installation of a commemorative plaque has also been made a condition of final site plan approval, and staff are currently working with the applicant right now with regards to the contents of the commemorative plaque. We also have Tracy Swift from SRM Architects to answer any questions the committee might have with regards to the addition proposed. Thank you.
Thank you, Diksha. And we do have with us, on behalf of 369 Frederick Street, Tracy Swift to answer any questions that the committee may have. Are there any questions? Yes, Peter, please.
Thank you. Excuse me. I have some questions about 2 aspects of the proposal. The questions on information that is provided in Appendix B, and specifically on pages 30 and 34. Is it possible to call up page 30 of Appendix B, which is the site plan for the total project showing both buildings.
Bear with me, I'll have to try to get up in the document camera if possible, okay? It said page 30?
I beg your pardon?
Page 30?
Yes, page 30 is the plan. I saw the plan go by on this presentation. That would be just as good. But the other is page 34, which is the elevation of the new building, which is going to sit in front. That's the one right there. Yeah, so if you go to page 30, we'll have the plan on it. There we go. Okay. So we have the new building that sits in front of the designated building, and the designated building has the addition that's on it. And in between the two of them is it's a fire route and a drop-off. The drop-off splits, and one goes to the long-term care and the other goes to the retirement. It seems to be that the necessity to clip the canopy down is being driven by the positioning of the new building, excuse me. And I'm wondering, is there any possible way in order to not change necessarily the volume of the new building, but the configuration of the new building and that entranceway in order to give a little more room to that turnaround there and be able to retain the canopy in its full form on that side?
Thank you, Tracy. Perhaps you can respond.
I'll try to explain this without floor plans in front of you. So right now, the way our building has been laid
Excuse
out.
me, Tracy,
Let me lean.
you have to speak right into the mic.
The way the building is currently designed is to utilize one servery on each floor. So currently, we have a servery that serves the existing resident home area, and we're connecting the new resident home area to utilize the same servery.
Oh, yes, is the canopy only being shortened on the long-term care side?
It is being shortened on both sides.
On both sides,
Yes.
right? So I'm going to the other side.
Okay, so the other side is to put in the ministry mandated drop-off that then the ministry asked us to put in the Ministry of Long-Term Care. So that is why it is being shortened, simply to fit that drop-off in.
There's a regulation of the distance between the drop-off and the front door that the canopy is...
They have not specified a distance.
I mean, it's already a long-term care, and there's already a front door and a canopy there that's been operating.
Our addition is on top of the current drop-off.
Okay, so I guess the question is the new building and its positioning driving the constriction of that entranceway and ultimately the need to chop off that end of the canopy? It's the new building that's asking to take off one side of the canopy.
Yes.
And it's the addition that's asking to take off the other side of the canopy.
Yes, yes, it is. And we have looked at other configurations. This operator prefers a circular operation where they have two RHAs circling amongst each other. That laid out the best on the site, given their operational standard. That's how we came up with our layout.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, welcome.
I just have one more question, and that's in the on page 34 of the Appendix D, which shows the elevation of the new building. Sorry about that. Yes. Thank you. How would you describe the style of this building?
It's Century. I don't know the name of the style. I'm the wrong person to ask that question. This is for the retirement home. This is for the retirement home.
Yes.
It is a century-looking building. That was the purpose of this design, was to look older than the current building.
Okay. And is there any consideration given of the relationship between the style and language of this building and the style and language of the designated building, which is in behind it?
I would say there currently is not a link between the two buildings, no. When this was currently designed, we weren't designating our current building as heritage.
Thank you.
Okay.
Are there any other questions for the applicant, the delegation? Ilona, do you have one for the delegation? Tracy, I think you have to come back.
So I had a question about the residents who are currently living there and what will happen to them during the construction period.
They're going to stay in place. We have phased construction. Right now, the building is actually going through an interior renovation with them staying in place. We will continue with a phased construction when this addition is constructed to maintain them within their home.
Okay, my street is currently under construction and it can cause a lot of chaos. And I just wondered, if these residents are already, fragile, how that might impact their cognitive ability to withstand a construction like that. So
I know People Care has a complete operational plan for the phasing of this project. I believe there's 12 different phases to work through to mitigate it. We have hours of days, times that we work. There's times that we don't work due to when the residents are around the home, like dinner and such. There's programs that they go to that they can vacate their space during the day if there's a loud activity going on. It is going to be disruptive. Construction always is. We do have an operational plan, or People Care does, that has been reviewed with the ministry on how they're going to make this build work successfully.
okay. And what are the timelines for getting these beds up and running, like operational?
Right now, our schedule is looking at mid-2025.
Okay, that's pretty quick.
It is. That's if everything goes well.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions for Tracy? Yes, Peter.
Thank you. I just wanted to make a couple of comments on the application. First is the addition to the existing long-term care. We had seen before the committee a few years ago was a proposed addition to the long-term care, and there were a lot of questions that were raised about it. And so to see this new scheme come back, I have to say this is really good work. It's very well done. The long-term care design is programmatically extremely difficult. And to take that kind of complexity of program, put it on such a restricted site against what is now a designated building is a tough job. And I think that it's been done very well. The new building, the designated building is in no way diminished. Right, it's improved by the addition, and I just think that's is very well done. I want to say good work on that.
Thank you.
The two areas that I have a bit of concern about is on the site plan with the drop-off area, and I think that if there was a slightly different configuration to the footprint of the retirement home, say, for example, that it looked like the letter H instead of the backwards letter C, you could get a little extra space in there that may be possible in order to move that central turn back a little bit and save that into the canopy. So I think that's a little disappointing that building is driving that alteration, where I think it may not necessarily have to. The other probably bigger difficulty I have with it is the architectural language of the new building in front of the designated building. The designated building and the international modernist style, it's very clean, very straightforward. The addition has picked up on this language really well. It has reinforced it, it's echoed it. But then in front of this building, sort of taking away the public view of the designated building, is the retirement home. And if the designated building was not there, there would be no problem with the design of this building. But because it sits in such proximity, I believe that there is some responsibility or obligation in order to address the design inconsistency between itself and the designated building. So it just seems that it's the two of them together are incongruous, right? They're speaking totally different languages, but they're sitting in such close proximity to each other. So I just have I have a concern about that aspect of it, but that's my comments. Thanks.
Thank you, Peter. Any other questions? Perhaps, Peter, you can raise this question and comment with staff when they come. Thank you, Tracy.
Yeah.
Okay, we're now going to go to staff, and I hear comments expressed regarding the design. And I wonder, Peter, if you have any comments or questions for staff on, as you have expressed to the delegation.
No, I think the concerns are, this is similar, express the same concerns to staff as I would to the delegate, to the applicant. I don't think there's any difference in those two concerns.
So I do have a question with regards to process. If we approve this recommendation, and we have these concerns expressed by our member. What will happen to the comments? Will they be recognized in the permit, or more discussion with the applicant? I understand we do make recommendations, we do look at these papers, we do read them, and now I think in all fairness to the committee, we need to know what's going to happen. So Diksha, could you enlighten us, please?
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. The site plan has been approved, as I mentioned, back in 2017. That included the architecture and the design of the freestanding retirement home. The site plan application that we're working on right now is just the stamp plan A application, and that only includes any sort of comments related to the addition to the existing building. And that stamp plan A application was only submitted because of the increase in height. So the site plan has been approved along with the design. I don't believe there is a chance to revisit that, but we are working with the applicant in other ways to commemorate this building.
Right, and the canopy then will go ahead, if we recommend this resolution, it will go ahead in its shortened, abbreviated state.
Through you, Madam Chair, yes.
All right, so I will read the recommendation now. That pursuant to Section 33 of the Ontario Heritage Act, Heritage Permit Application HPA 2023 be approved to permit the alterations of and a four-story addition to the property municipally addressed as 369 Frederick Street in accordance with the supplementary information submitted with the application and subject to the following condition: that final building permit drawings be reviewed and heritage clearance be provided by heritage planning staff prior to the issuance of a building permit. Do I have a mover for this recommendation? Councillor Michaud. So, all those in favor? Opposed? Okay. Since it's not unanimous, it will then go to council June the 19th. Thank you very much. Our next item is 4-4, 883 Dune Village Road, Heritage Permit Application. This involves the demolition of the rear addition, alteration to rear window and door, and construction of new addition. Jessica Vera, our heritage planner, will provide a brief presentation and overview. And Beth Hansen is here on behalf of the applicant to answer questions.
Thank you. So through you, Madam Chair, the next application, as noted, is for the property municipally addressed as 883 Dune Village Road, located on the south side of Dune Village Road between Betchell Drive to the northwest and Anvil Street to the southeast. The property is designated under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act. So the proposed work, sorry, I'm just not quite sure what's happening with there we go. The proposed work is threefold. The first step involves the demolition of the existing rear addition, which is not original to the home. This existing rear addition is in poor condition and it cannot function as livable space due to the deterioration that it has experienced, as well as a lack of insulation, heating, or electrical services within this portion of the home. The next part involves the construction of a new one-story rear addition. This will provide additional living space for the property owners. It's proposed to be one story in height as noted, and while a portion will extend into the rear side yard. Visibility of this new addition from the street line would be limited due to the topography of the land, the position of the home on the property, the front yard vegetation that's existing. Further, additional landscaping is proposed to provide additional screening, and the addition is of a design that's complement to but distinctive from the original home per the standards and guidelines for the conservation of historic places in Canada. The final portion of this work would involve the alteration to a rear second-story door and the removal of a rear second-story window in order to accommodate the height and width of the proposed addition. And that concludes my summary.
Thank you, Jessica. And now, as I mentioned, our applicant, or the delegation for the applicant is here, Beth Hansen, to answer any questions from the committee. Any questions? Yes, Peter.
Okay. Thank you. Hi, Peter.
Good afternoon. The first question I have is the site plan that, or sorry, there was a floor plan that was submitted that was shown as part of this. Who's the designer of this addition? Who designed it?
I believe it was my sister. The ideas all came from her. My sister.
Yes.
She designed it, and then she worked with a contractor to do some basic CAD drawings for the purposes of this meeting. So by no means are they the official drawings to be submitted with the building permit, but they're just for purposes of the discussion today to proceed with consideration of the demolition, et cetera.
Okay, so she designed the floor plans of the building, took them to an engineer who then completed the building permit drawings?
They're still working for the building permit process. There's several steps that are associated with this application in particular. So that hasn't been formalized yet. So, but the drawings are basically what they're proposing to proceed with in terms of site plan and floor plan.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, I just wanted to confirm, this is a board and batten exterior?
So the main dwelling, the one that has the designated attributes, is actually a brick dwelling. And then the addition on the back would be a board and batten clad addition.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Peter. Are there any questions, other questions for the delegation? Thank you, Beth. Now, questions for Jessica Stout. Any questions? I have two. Knowing this property well, I just wondered, the statement about the visual buffer or the landscaping, and where would this be proposed to be? In the front yard, because it's quite a front yard, big front yard.
Sorry. Through you, Madam Chair, the visual buffer would be directly in front of the addition, so it would be in the rear side yard. And based on discussions I've had with the property owners, it would include like hedges or shrubbery. So it would be not in the front yard. My comments address the existing vegetation in the front yard. The additional vegetation or additional landscaping would be in the rear side yard, directly in front of the addition.
Right. I do have another question, and that has to do with regard to the windows. And I realize that this is not part of the original structure. However, it talks about vinyl windows and 6/6. And so has the applicant presented any examples of what these windows are going to be like?
Sorry, to clarify, Madam Chair, are you wanting like a material board? Is that what you're looking for?
Well, there are several ways to have these 6/6. So you can have 2 panes of glass with the muntins or mullions in between, plastic, or you can have them affixed to the outside of the glass. And I just wondered what is proposed.
So through you, Madam Chair, this might be a question best asked to the applicant. But from my discussions with the landowner, she did say that it would be the same design as what is currently existing on the house.
So what you're telling me is that on the exterior of the glass, the mullions would be, or the muntins?
Would be a point I would need to confirm.
Right. I do have concern, as you know, about vinyl windows, and the perception out in the public is that they are just as good as the old ones, and you know, who can tell the difference? What I have seen with the plastic, shall we say plastic or vinyl or whatever, when they are fit between the two panes of glass, and I've seen this in heritage buildings in New Brunswick, where in time these pieces, they break. And I would hope that we're seeing it on the exterior of the glass in some way, rather than between the, and I'm thinking it's like dual glass or double pane glass. So I'm just going to leave it there then, and I'll let you think. I think maybe the applicant would like to come back, and that's fine by me.
Thank you. My sister has provided me with a quotation from Bavarian Window Works that does have the style of the windows specified, and I'm sure she'd be happy to share that with you. I can't speak because I don't know all the jargon right off the top of my head for all the specifications of it, but I'd be happy to provide a copy with you for review afterwards. Just regarding vinyl windows, I too am a heritage property owner, and I know this precedent has become a big point of discussion in previous years with heritage homeowners because wood windows are very expensive for heritage homeowners, especially when you're rehabilitating properties with lots of windows. And being a heritage homeowner takes a special kind of person to commit the time, the money, the energy into rehabilitation and restoration. And for a lot of people, vinyl windows are the way to go. If everyone could afford wood windows, that would be the case because they are beautiful. They just take a lot of maintenance over the years, and there are other considerations to a heritage structure other than just the windows for maintenance. So I do believe the quotation is for vinyl windows, but they are provided by Bavarian, which is a preeminent window supplier in Kitchener-Waterloo area. So they would be a very high caliber vinyl window. And again, I would be happy to provide you with the specifications for that.
Fine, thank you. Yes, Robin.
Yeah, I just want to make a comment in committee about this specifically. Can I ask folks, do you know what happens to wood windows in the heat?
If I may,
Yeah.
I do have old wood windows, and they have lasted for over 100 years. I do have new wood windows, and they're fine.
That's excellent. My experience, and I live in quite an old house in downtown Kitchener, is that wood expands in the summer, and especially with the climate crisis that we are currently facing, where we have had the warmest June on record. Yes, wood is nice, but it's also just like I can't close my back door in the summer because of the heat, because it is still the original door on the house for wood. And so there's a lot of considerations here in terms of that debate and argument. We need heritage buildings that people can use and actually live in and enjoy. And yeah, we're going to have to make some decisions as a human race, not just as the city of Kitchener, as a group, in terms of valuing things like air conditioning, there's just a lot of pieces here yeah, it's not just a class issue in term that, as our speaker has brought up, but it's also like an accessibility to air conditioning issue. And I do not currently have air conditioning in my house fully. I would encourage anyone who hasn't lived in a house in the summer without air conditioning in the last 2 years, and I say that sincerely, to do so, because it's really crappy and it is not a nice feeling.
Well, thank you very much, Robin, for your expressing your concern and opinion. Okay, so any more questions, comments?
I have comment.
Yes, Councillor Michaud.
I just want to thank the applicant's sister for coming and presenting today. I was out visiting the applicant, and she took me a walk through her property and showed me the hog and hen house and showed me how much care they're giving even to the back where all the protected trees are. It's amazing what they've done with this property, and I just can't say enough of how much care and love they've put into this place, particularly the hog and hen house, which incidentally is a nominee for the Mike and Pat Wagner Award as well. So at the appropriate time, I would like to move this application.
Thank you, Councillor Michaud. Yes, Peter, on topic.
Yep, I'm a little torn on this application, and it's from some of the same things about the previous application, and that is the language of the building, the style of the building. Normally, if there was an addition to a heritage home that comes in front of the committee, if it was completely out of the sight of the public realm, then I would have no comment, right? It's really not germane. But the fact that this building actually does come out and is visible from the public realm, I think gives it, brings in sort of another set of obligations that it has. And I don't doubt the work that's been put into the creating this heritage property. But the language of the addition and the language of the original house seem to be quite at odds with each other. The original house is formal. It's symmetrical. It's very much a statement of class and place, and it's really it has a kind of sort of formal presence in the way that it sits in the site. The language of the addition is so radically different from it. It's asymmetrical, it's one story, it has a different roof line, it has different materials, it speaks a different language. When I look at it, the language that it conjures for me is more agrarian building. This is a farm building. It has that same materiality, that same low roof, that same kind of shape. And to have both of these kind of sitting beside each other, they have such little language to do with each other. The ways that additions can be tied into historical buildings through studies of proportion, geometry, of materiality, of roof lines, of fenestrations. It's very absent here, and I don't think that the addition, I'm not confident that it really makes this building a better building because of those reasons. So I'm kind of hesitant, and I ask other members of the committee for their opinion.
Thank you, Peter. Councillor Michaud.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I'm going to take Robin first, and then Councillor Michaud. Robin hasn't had a chance. Robin, please.
Desiree. I guess to speak in defense of the plan, this is replacing an addition that was already not part of the original house. So I already challenged, do they even speak the same language to begin with? And is that the goal is to have them speak exactly the same language, or is the goal to have what is obviously a very dedicated heritage property owner be able to actually use their space and functionality? Because as of right now, we're talking about replacing something that was already added on after the fact that, again, probably doesn't speak the same language, that is wholly unusable. So is there a way to kind of meet in the middle and have that communication, where it's like maybe it doesn't exactly speak the same language of the house, but it is still in communication and is providing the homeowner with an ability to actually use their space effectively?
Thank you, Des. Councillor Michaud?
Des, that was very good. That was pretty much what I was going to say, and I will just add to this, that with all the heritage homes that we have in this community, and with an application like this, that all they're trying to do is better their quality of life and keep their property looking as pristine as it has for years. It's looked, I don't think I've seen it look better. I don't, to your point, all your expertise, Peter, I respect it, and I understand where you're, I don't understand where you're coming from because I can't understand half the stuff, but I respect that, full transparency. But I do think that when you have an application like this who, want to preserve what they have, they're not changing. They're not changing any of the original house. They're preserving what they have and just enhancing this space. I think this needs to be accepted.
Thank you, Councillor Michaud. Any other questions, comments? So without further ado, I shall read that pursuant to Section 33 of the Ontario Heritage Act, Heritage Permit Application HPA 2023, IV 009, requesting permission for the demolition of an existing one-story rear yard addition, the alteration to one door and one window on the rear facade, the construction of a one-story rear yard addition on the property municipally addressed as 883 Doon Village Road, be approved in accordance with the supplementary information submitted with the application and subject to the following conditions: that vegetation in the front yard be maintained or new vegetation introduced as a visual buffer where feasible, that prior to the issuance of the heritage permit, stage 1, 2, 3, and 4 archaeological assessments, if required, be submitted to the satisfaction of the heritage planning staff, and that final building permit drawings be reviewed and heritage clearance provided by heritage planning staff prior to the issuance of a building permit. And with that, who would move the, I'm going to take Des. Des has moved it. All those in favor? So it would appear that it's unanimous, and therefore staff may proceed with this under delegated approval authority. Thank you. I appreciate this discussion, and I think it's very valuable with respect to future applications that are coming. Not that we're trying to make it difficult, it's just that we need to make people aware of our concerns with respect to heritage preservation and how we can move forward in a positive fashion. Thank you. So our next item is the draft heritage impact assessment, 137-149 Queen Street South. And for those of you who may wonder where this is, it is behind and adjacent to the Lutheran Church. And I believe it's St. Paul's Lutheran Church on Queen Street South in that area. So, Diksha, would you be ready to present? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So the next item on the agenda is the draft heritage impact assessment for the properties municipally addressed as 137 and 149 Queen Street South. Both of these properties are located within the Victoria Park Area Heritage Conservation District and are designated under Part 5 of the Ontario Heritage Act. Additionally, both these properties have been classified as Group A buildings, meaning they're of high significance. They're also located within the Victoria Park Neighborhood Cultural Heritage Landscape. The proposed development includes the construction of a 6-story affordable housing building with 1 level of underground parking and a 2-way exit entry ramp along Queen Street South, located towards the rear of 149 Queen Street South. That would be Building C. At-grade parking is also proposed with access to Church Street. The existing heritage properties will be preserved in situ with no alterations proposed to these existing buildings. Due to time constraints related to securing funding from the region for affordable housing projects, the development proposal has received conditional site plan approval, subject to several conditions, including the circulation of this HIA to the committee, any potential revisions to the design that may be a result of this discussion today, final approval of the HIA by the Director of Planning, as well as obtaining a heritage permit for the construction of the new building, which will be coming back to the committee in the future. The draft HIA has concluded that the proposed development will have minor to no negative impacts on the immediately adjacent heritage properties. The proposed building also incorporates design cues from the surrounding context to better integrate within the Heritage Conservation District, but remain distinguishable and contemporary in design. Staff are in process of reviewing the HIA and at this time are requesting the committee's input and feedback. The applicant's heritage consultant unfortunately could not make it to the meeting, but we do have the project architect, Matt Bolin, and Peter Maxwell here in case the committee has any questions. Just to remind the committee that a motion is not recommended for this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Diksha. And I'm just wondering if Peter Maxwell or Matt Bolin from Edge Architects, would you like to come forward? I realize you're not making I don't think you are, or are you making a presentation? Yes? You're here as a delegation. As I urged everybody, you have to speak into the mic so that we can hear you. So please introduce yourself, and you have 5 minutes.
Okay, my name is Matt Bolin from Edge Architects. And I'm Peter Maxwell from Maxwell Building Consultants. We're the development consultant on the project. I'll maybe just give a little introduction and a little history. The St. Paul's Congregation, Historic St. Paul's Congregation, approached us, Maxwell Building Consultants, about 2.5 years ago now, that they were interested in making some better use of their site to further some of the ministry to the community, and they identified the need for affordable housing, particularly in the downtown core, as something that would address that objective. We've since been working with them through the process. I mean, from our point of view, an affordable housing project needs primarily 3 things. It needs a willing proponent, it needs a site, and it needs a financeable project. So we had a willing proponent, and they already had a site, so we were pretty excited about starting with 2 out of 3. So we worked on the design and the financing package. As part of that process, we responded to a request for proposals from the region of Waterloo for affordable housing, and were successful in that process. That's sort of a double-edged knife in that when you're successful, the clock starts. There's always time constraints that both the region and especially the province put on this type of funding. So that really meant that we needed to increase our rate of development and getting through the design process. So as we've refined the design, we've gone through the site plan process, and we always knew that Heritage was going to be part of that process. So that's kind of the step we're on now.
Great. I'll just add a couple points. For us, we're very excited about this project and its potential to be a really good piece of infill development, much needed infill urban development in the city. We've worked with Maxwell's as well as various other stakeholders throughout Kitchener and the region over the last number of years executing projects like this, but this one in particular I think is interesting and special for us. One, because of the adjacency obviously to these really important and significant heritage structures and the urban fabric surrounding them, but also because with this team and with some of the initiatives that have been taken, we're looking to be very complementary to those, but yet obviously, as was discussed and as we've been working back and forth with the city on, doing so in a complementary and yet contemporary way, which for us and from our work with McCallum Sather and Kanika, our heritage planner, and Diksha, we believe is the right approach in this case. But also this building and this construction type will utilize a very innovative mass timber structural system that not only is highly sustainable through its carbon embodiment, but also gives a really warm and welcoming sense about it. That will be both inside the building and inside of some of the spaces for residents, but also outside some of the adjacent public throughfare spaces that will be enjoyed by both the congregation, the public, and neighboring properties. So again, we're very excited to execute that. There is a lot that goes into, I mean, even the images that we see in front of us and the difficulties sometimes in communicating, exact material. That's going to be one of the challenges, one of the things we're going to really take on the project. With a building like the St. Paul's Church, that the masonry, the construction detailing is so impressive, but also, from a time and place when craftsmanship was much different, when materials were just much more eclectic, I guess. So trying to pick out and match an exact brick type or something like that becomes a real challenge with contemporary design and construction methodologies. So for us, again, we lean on providing something that is going to have a really clean look, a contemporary look, but also not be overpowering. So to provide some neutral and subdued tones that will, again, be complementary to the two really beautiful pieces of heritage out on the street face, and we can sit back, provide much needed housing, and again, hopefully a really nice piece of complementary urban fabric building.
And that's your presentation?
Yes.
You're open for questions. Thank you.
Yep.
Questions for the delegation? Yes, Andrew.
Just very quickly, I appreciated your high-level skim on what the finish is and what you're planning to have. I wonder, we have this elevation in front of us. Would you be able to quickly describe what some of the different materials are going to be?
Sure. Yeah, happy to. So the nature of the lower portion, what has more of a sand or even a buff look to it, obviously tying from the region, would be a brick, a masonry. Again, we're going to work on that. We're working on a few different things within that masonry. Things that we can do with contemporary building methodologies are things like insets or different ways of running the brick. We don't have the masonry stonemasons that we used to have, but we can do things like that. So that whole lower level, and what again will have that more heaviness and strength out of the base will and again tie into some of that scale and proportion of the adjacent buildings will be masonry, and that has been chosen. Above will be more of a panelized, lighter weight product that typically, again, from a cost standpoint, given the affordable uses, is good, but also, and one of the things that we've been working with a lot of our not-for-profit stakeholders in affordable and supportive housing is I wouldn't by any means call it an inexpensive product, because then you just get into really, problematic durability issues over time. So the panelized product is not intended to be cheap, but it does just really help free up the construction and the weight of hanging that off the building. And it also, again, will help us with that palette to create a more subdued look and feel, not something that seems really dominant or busy or overpowering. So those are the two areas there. The other that doesn't show up in these 2D elevations, unfortunately, is the mass timber structure I was talking about, specifically on the right bottom image, will incorporate an exterior canopy, and that canopy will be adjacent to the main entrance, of course, parking and drop-off off of the Church Street access to the property. And so that's where, again, we'll pull people in. That canopy obviously will have glue-lam beam columns and then the CLT slab, like a wood slab above, that will be contiguous along that path that people, will take to get into the church and get into the building. So that's going to really create a really nice sense of warmth. And so you can see the dark sort of banding there represents sort of a reveal and a break that we're using strategically in that location to help signify that entrance, draw people into it, and that darker tone, it's again looking a bit dark on the screen here, but the darker tone contrasted against that really warmth, light wood tone really helps it pop off the page. And then as you can see, again, that same architectural move we're actually using on the Queen Street facade. And the Queen Street facade is where you will come in just adjacent to your life. So if we're looking at the top left image, you can actually see to the left side of the image in the distance the canopy, which will be further away. But in the foreground is where you'll actually be able to have a drop-off for the church to your right before you get back to the building. And then as you approach the building is actually where you are able to go and utilize the underground parking that's provided underneath the building, that's basically built into the slope of the site. And in that same area, that same architectural move on the facade will be used with, again, hopefully some tones of that structure exposed on that reveal where you drive in under and give access, and then also signify an important point and a gateway into the project.
Thank you. Andrew, you're satisfied. Thank you. Any other questions for the delegation? I have an interest, and I think I heard you talked about the color. And so it's a combination of brick and then this other material. I don't know it. I have no idea what that is, modern. And could you just review what the colors are one more time?
Sure. So again, the brick right now, what we're working with, and again, this takes us getting out to site even with our own samples to make sure we understand for the masonry particularly what masonry we're using, what is the variation in a given masonry selection, and what is the mortar color of that masonry. Those are all really important things that we'll be going to site and matching up against the existing structures to make sure it's complementary. So that's for that portion. For the upper portion, what I refer to as a panelized lightweight cladding, that can be a few different types of product. And again, it does tie into the type of finish you'd like to have. Do you want it to be reflective versus something that has more of a matte finish? So there's basically different types of engineered products that could be, they could be anything from metal, like a composite-backed metal finish, which typically has a little bit more of a sheen to it, to more of a Pollock or almost it's not stucco, because again, we don't want to get into utilizing stucco because of durability, but almost like a stone or a rock type finish to it. There's a few different products we're looking at that, again, we're going to look to optimize based on both, cost and finish, the right complementary finish. But again, I think the light, whether it be beige or tan or something that is more sand cream style that can help do what we're looking to do here with the color palette is what we're going for.
So you are considering then the color finish of the church and the house?
Correct.
Where it will sit in
Correct.
the yard. All right,
Yeah.
Thank you. I had no idea that there was that much space in behind those buildings and around. So well done for the congregation and yourselves to work out something, especially for affordable housing. It's good. Are there some other questions? Yes, Councilman Shaw.
So I have comments. I just have comments, no questions.
Yes.
Yes, comments?
Yes,
Okay.
go ahead,
Okay.
please.
I want to say, I think this is fascinating what you're doing now. You did a great job at the Blockline YW buildings.
yes.
And so to see you incorporate the mass timber and with all the heritage part, I'm really looking forward to see the outcome of this. I'm pretty confident it's going to be pretty amazing.
Great.
Well done.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for the delegation? Well, thank you very much for coming in.
Thanks.
And now we will go back and return to Diksha. Are there questions for Diksha? All right, seeing none then, we have received it for information, and we have feedback and comments. So it would seem that you can proceed and continue to work with Diksha and staff. Thank you. So this is not a item that requires a formal motion at this time. And so now I would like to give you the good news that we are going to recess and reconvene in 15 minutes. And because we have such a very long agenda, we do have some refreshments over here for committee members. So what I need to have happen is someone to move a recess, and then we can continue after 15 minutes. So is there someone who would vote for that? Councillor Michaud votes for the recess. All those in favor? Since there are no no's to this, we will recess and come back here at 25 minutes to 6. could return to 4.7, which is the 2023 Mike and Pat Wagner Award nomination summary. And I also wanted to highlight that there was an addendum report which was circulated yesterday, and I trust that you've been able to read the nominations and the background material. And with that, Jessica, I'll call on you and you can do a presentation. But maybe what I should mention is that Jessica will do a brief presentation, and you'll have the information in front of you on the screen. And if there are any questions, you can ask staff. And then we will be voting on the nominations, and Mariah, our committee administrator, will be handing out ballots, and each of us will vote and selecting up to 4 award winners each. And then, Mariah, I assume you're going to pick them all up and tally the vote. So with that, Jessica, I will turn it over to you and you can make the presentation. Thank you.
Through you, Madam Chair. So per the memo from the April Heritage Kitchener meeting, the City of Kitchener is hosting the 2023 Kitchener Great Places Award, which includes the Mike and Pat Wagner Heritage Award. A call for nominations was put forward and the following 6 submissions were received. First in the preservation and restoration category is 87 Scott Street, which is a property listed on the Municipal Heritage Register. The work converted a property that has fallen into disrepair into a new duplex in a manner that preserved many of its original attributes. This included, but is not limited to, repairing crumbling masonry, the tooth fascia detailing, repairing or replacing damaged windows and door frames, and repairing or restoring the veranda. The second submission for the preservation and restoration category is for 48 Ontario Street, known as the Canadian Legion Building and designated under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act. A heritage impact assessment was completed as part of the restoration project and its recommendations implemented in the work, which included the installation of new building systems such as electrical, mechanical, and plumbing systems, the installation of a new roof, new windows, and significant masonry repairs. Other interior repairs included the remediation of lead paint and asbestos tiles and exposing and repairing original brick walls and concrete structural elements as feature pieces. The third nomination for this category is for 404 King Street West, known as the Kaufman Lofts, and designated under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act. The proposed project aimed to renew deteriorating features in a manner that conserved their heritage value while improving the facade's ability to manage moisture in order to extend the lifespan of the architectural elements. The work included concrete and masonry repairs, improving water shedding details and flashing, resealing cladding joints to prevent water infiltration, and repainting and recoating exterior elements. The first nomination for the second category, which is the rehabilitation and adaptive reuse category, is 114 Victoria Street South, known as the Glove Box. This property is listed on the Municipal Heritage Register and is part of a new development that included the construction of a 7-story addition of office space on top. The entirety of the building was conserved, save for a deteriorated roof structure and select supporting elements. Exterior work also involved the repair and repointing of damaged brick, the repair and restoration of stone sills, and the replacement of all the windows, which at the time were not original to the building, with historically appropriate units. Interior work included the preservation of the original hardwood floorboards and timber beams. The second nomination for this category is 883 Dune Village Road, designated under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act. Work involved the relocation, restoration, and adaptive reuse of what is known as the Hog and Hen House. An extensive process was undertaken to relocate the structure and included hand excavation in sections, securing those sections by metal strapping, moving them via large L-beams and hydraulic hacks. Once the structure was moved to its new location, repointing was completed with limestone mortar, new window awning windows were installed, and a new steel roof representative of the original was installed as well. The building is now used by the property owners as a guest space. The final nomination for the rehabilitation and adaptive reuse category is for 1 Queen Street North, listed on the Municipal Heritage Register and known as the American Hotel. Work to the property included improvements to the structural integrity of the building through sistering sagging joists, adding supporting beams and columns, and bracing openings. Masonry repairs were also done, and the building was finished with trim, molding, and cornices appropriate to the architectural style of the building. So as mentioned by the chair, you can now take this time to discuss among yourselves or consider the nominations, and a ballot will be distributed in which you will write down your votes.
Any questions for Jessica? Andrew?
Thanks. Really quickly, clarification.
Could you speak in your mic?
Is 1 Queen Street North also on the ballot? It's just not listed here? Yes? Okay, thank you.
That came in the addendum yesterday. Any other questions? Well, without further ado, Mariah will distribute the ballots and we'll vote. And it's up to 4 candidates, up to. Mariah, are you ready to report? Thank you.
Based on the results of the vote, Heritage Kitchener Committee has selected 87 Scott Street, 48 Ontario Street North, 883 Dune Village Road, and 1 Queen Street North for the 2023 Mike and Pat Wagner Awards.
Thank you. So now, I believe we have to vote to accept this, right? All right. Do we need a motion for it?
If you could just put forward a mover, just to confirm that the Heritage Kitchener Committee select those 4 properties.
Oh, I'm sorry.
for the-
Move it. Oh, here we are. So just go ahead with the motion then. All right, thank you. That Heritage Kitchener Committee received the 2023 Mike and Pat Wagner Award nomination summary and vote for up to 4 winners. And the 4 winners have been announced. So who will move it? Andrew, thank you. All those in favor then? Carried. So this will then go to council June 19. Thank you. Now we come to Bill 23, City of Kitchener's Municipal Heritage Register Review. And Diksha and Jessica will provide a brief presentation. So we will hold our questions until after all the presentations. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So as part of our municipal register review, which has been triggered by Bill 23, staff today are bringing the review of the first 8 listed properties. These include 3 properties that have already been assessed by the designation subcommittee, and so staff did further work to confirm the heritage value as part of the work plan that was established early on in the year. These include 24 Courtland Avenue East, 26 Courtland Avenue East, and 2 to 22 Duke Street East. 5 other properties were evaluated, which were part of the field evaluations done by HK in March. These include 70 Francis Street South, 54 to 68 King Street West, 144 to 150 King Street West, 58 Queen Street South, and 73 Yonge Street. So for the next little while, Jessica and I will take you through our findings for each property. Apologies, but it's going to be a lot of information to absorb, but most of this information has already been included in the statement of significance that we had attached with the report. So we're going to start with 24 Courtland Avenue East. It's part of a walk-up of row housing known as Nelson's Terrace. The building is situated on a 0.05 acre parcel of land located on the north side of Courtland Avenue between Queen Street and Benton Street in the Mill Courtland Woodside Park community. So 24 Courtland and 26 Courtland had similar heritage value. They were built in 1899 by Martin Nelson, who was a businessman. What's interesting about this is that the properties immediately surrounding these townhomes, that is 22 Courtland Avenue East if you look at the location map, and 28 to 38 Courtland, are all already designated under Part 5 of the Ontario Heritage Act. They come within the Victoria Park Heritage Conservation District. These 2 properties are the only properties that are just listed. So this walk-up row townhouse was built in the unique vernacular Victorian Gothic architectural style. The key features include yellow brick construction, which in this case has been painted over, but is still considered an important heritage attribute as it retained its original construction. The decorative brickwork, including the tri-brick creastones, which you can see above the windows, the brick voussoirs, the flat roof with the cornice. I also wanted to add that the date of its construction makes it one of the oldest buildings still standing in Kitchener. In our assessment, we found that this property meets 5 out of the 9 criteria of Ontario Regulation 906. It meets criteria 1 because it is an early example of architectural style, of the Victorian Gothic style. And not only that, it is a rare example of row housing in Kitchener. Not many examples of such a construction exist in our city. These styles are more popularly found in big cities like Toronto or New York. This site has significant historical and associative value because of its original owner and use. This property was built in 1899 by Martin Nelson to house the female workers from the adjacent William Green and Rome shirt and collar factory on Queen Street South, now known as the Bread and Roses Cooperative, located just behind this townhouse complex. Nelson also established the Nelson and Forsyth Foundry on King Street West at College Street. They produced furnaces, boilers, pipes, and heaters. Significant later owners of the row housing building included Isaac Shantz, A.O. Bomer, and Joseph Bingaman. This walk-up row housing is also representative of the development that was taking place in Kitchener to support the industrial development that was taking place in the late 19th century and early 20th century. The contextual value relates to the building's historic and visual link to its adjacent industrial buildings, including the former Williams Green and Rome shirt and collar factory, now known as the Bread and Roses Cooperative, and the Air Shirt Factory. Staff had similar findings for 26 Cortlandt Avenue East, which is just immediately adjacent to 24 Cortlandt Avenue East. This property also met 5 out of the 9 criteria, the same ones as 24 Cortlandt Avenue.
So 2-22 Duke Street East, known as the Food Block, is a 2-story early 20th century commercial building located on the corner of Queen Street North and Duke Street East. Our assessment determined that the property meets 6 of the 9 criteria for designation under Ontario Regulation 906. It meets the first 2 criteria of the building as it's a notable and unique example of the Art Deco architectural style, and it further possesses many intricate and intact design elements, including a mix of brick and concrete pilasters capped with stone detailing, stone finials, floral motifs, and the Bright Up family grant of arms over a semicircular window. It has historical and associative value as it relates to the theme of economic development within the area, particularly the downtown core, and it further has direct association with the Bright Up family, as it was built and originally owned by William H. Bright Up. The Bright Up family was of great significance to the community. W.H. Bright Up himself carried on the family interest in both the Berlin and Waterloo Railway and the Berlin Gas Company. Further, he had a significant interest in both city planning and heritage preservation, being the first chairman of the City Planning Commission and helping to establish the Waterloo Historical Society in 1912. It was through his efforts that this portion of Duke Street, on which the building is situated, was secured and opened. In terms of contextual value, the contextual value of this property relates to its physical and historical location, being linked to the construction of Duke Street, the surrounding historic buildings, and the economic growth and development in the downtown area. So the next property we looked at was 70 Francis Street, which is a 2.5-story building, formerly a residential dwelling, and now operates as an office space. Our assessment determined that this property meets 5 of the 9 criteria. So the first criteria is met as it's a representative example of a late 19th century Queen Anne architectural style dwelling. It has historical and associative value due to the original ownership of the home. The building was constructed by Albert Ruby, who established in partnership with Hartman Krug, the H. Krug Furniture Company. Krug Furniture still operates today and is headed by Len Ruby, who's the great-grandson of Albert Ruby. Krug Furniture was in the early 20th century the largest furniture plant in the British Empire, and it helped what was then Berlin establish its name as the furniture capital of Canada. The furniture industry was instrumental to the growth and development of the city. The contextual value of the building relates to its physical, historic, and visual link to the surrounding area and surrounding buildings, including the Krug Furniture Factory, which is located in proximity at 111 Aaron Street West and /135 Bright Up Street. Our next property is 54 to 68 King Street West. This property is a 1-story 20th century commercial building, though the height of the first floor gives it the appearance of 2 stories. It's located on the intersection of King Street West and Ontario Street North, and our assessment determined that 58 to 68 King Street West met 8 of the 9 criteria for designation. The first 2 criteria are met, as the building is a representative example of the modern architectural style, though it also displays both classical and neoclassical motifs. It is a sophisticated blend of different styles, as well as the utilization of high-quality material and different decorative elements, which elevate this building's craftsmanship. The property is associated with banking institutions, specifically the Bank of Nova Scotia, as well as economic development in the city. It was also designed by Carl Ryder, who made significant contributions to the development of the modernist style of architecture in Southwest Ontario and in Waterloo region specifically. The building has contextual value as it maintains and supports the commercial character of the surrounding area, continues its historical use as a bank, and can be considered a landmark as it's easily recognizable given its distinctive appearance. It helps to define an intersection on a primary road within a prominent location as well. (144) to 150 King Street West is a 4-story, late 19th century building that historically operated as office space above and commercial space on the ground floor. Our assessment determined that the building meets 6 of the 9 designation criteria. The building is a representative example of the classical revival architectural style in a commercial building, and further, it displays a high degree of technical achievement, as the original facade of the building is likely the first to be built with precast concrete within the city. That original facade does still exist behind the existing facade today. Further, it has historic value as it's associated with the theme of economic development within the downtown core. The contextual value of this building lies in its contribution to the continuity of the King Street West streetscape and its physical, historical, and visual link to the surrounding area.
So next we have 58 Queen Street South. It's a 3-story Renaissance Revival style building that was built circa 1900. It is located on the west side of Queen Street South between Charles Street East and King Street in the city commercial downtown core. These are just zoomed in pictures of some of the architectural details of the building. So according to our assessment, this property met 4 out of the 9 criteria for Ontario Regulation 906. The design and physical values relate to the Renaissance Revival architectural style that is in good condition with many intact original elements. The building features a rectangular plan, brick construction, decorative brickwork, and stone headers and sills. We discovered that the building has significant historical and contextual value. The historical value relates to 2 of its previous owners, John Fennell and Carl Nicholas Weber, and its present owner, the Working Center. So the building was once used as a hardware company, and the hardware company was founded on June 1st, 1863 by John Fennell, and that carried his name for 60 years. John Fennell was born on August 8, 1837 in Cobourg, Ontario, and arrived in Kitchener in 1863, and was a young hardware merchant at the time. He was a prominent and one of the most successful businessmen in the community at the time, and his hardware company sold plated ware, paint, glass, oils, etc. In addition to being a successful businessman, he was also an important member of the society at the time. He was the founding president of the Board of Trade and the founding organizer of the Economic Mutual Fire Insurance Company. In addition to all these achievements, he also served as a councillor on Berlin's Council from 1881 to 1882. In 1886, the Berlin Trade of Board was established, with John Fennell serving as its first president. He was instrumental in preparing the bylaws at the time, some of which still stand today as they were first prepared. In addition to these activities, John Fennell also served as a church warden of St. John's Church for many years. He died in 1922, and the property and the firm were purchased by Carl Nicholas Weber. After Carl purchased the property and firm, he renamed it to Weber Hardware Company Limited in 1923. Carl Weber was born on January 19, 1899 in Elmira. For many years, he operated the Weber Hardware Company Limited. In addition to his business interests, he was also a longtime member and president of the Kitchener Board of Trade, and he was also elected as a chairman of the Kitchener Urban Renewal Committee in 1971. He has also served as a director for Canada Trust, the Equitable Life Insurance Company, and the Economic Mutual Insurance Company. Beyond his business interests, he also served as Kitchener's community, as a member of the KW Hospital Commission for 22 years, and was a chairman for 20 of those years. He was also a member of the Board of Governors at the University of Waterloo when it was first established in 1957 till his death in 1978. He was also an active member of the Lutheran Church. He served as a Canadian delegate to the World Council of Churches in India in 1961, representing Kitchener in Canada on a global platform. Carl's company, the Weber Hardware Company Limited, operated out of this building at 58 Queen Street South from circa 1918 till 1927, when it moved to the adjacent building at 66 Queen Street. The company moved to the building at 675 Queen Street South in 1987 and is currently known as the C.N. Weber Limited, and still continues to operate today, becoming one of the rare businesses surviving from the time when Kitchener was still Berlin. The existing use of the building is for the Working Center. The Working Center has been operating out of this building since the mid-1980s. The building also has contextual value as being built in the downtown commercial core of Berlin before it became Kitchener, and is part of a group of buildings that were built at a time when industrial and commercial development in Berlin, which is now Kitchener, was happening. Today, these buildings are located in the downtown commercial core of Kitchener and greatly contribute to the character of the area. The building is still in its original location and maintains historical and visual links to its surroundings. So the last property that we reviewed was 73 Yonge Street, which is also known as St. Mary's Roman Catholic Church. It is an early 20th century building built in the Gothic architectural style, and it's located on the east side of Weber and Yonge Street between Duke Street West and Weber Street West in the city commercial core. The design and the physical value of this building resides in its Gothic architecture, laid out in the shape of a Latin cross with extensive use of decorative brick and stone molding, buttresses and circular brick tiles, and overall symmetry of the church with similar facade and fenestration patterns on the facade. We can see the generous use of architectural detailing, be it in the rose windows present in almost all of the facades, the trefoil patterns with tracery, decorative rose brick tiles, stained glass windows on its side facades, 2 towers on either end of the church, one 3-story and one 4-story, with stone band courses on each floor. And the building is in really good condition with many intact original elements. So according to our assessment, this property met 8 out of the 9 criteria, making it a significant heritage resource for Kitchener. The historic and associative value relates to the original owner and the use of the property, and the contribution they made to the history of Berlin, now Kitchener. The land has always been used as a church, with that use continuing today. Originally, the land was purchased on August 16, 1854, from David Weber for $200. Prior to the formation of St. Mary's Parish, the few Catholic families traveled to St. Akava Church just outside of present-day Kitchener to attend Mass. In 1852, Kitchener, at the time, was chosen to be the country seat. Father Rupert Ebner S.J., who was the spiritual leader from 1848 to 1856, encouraged the Catholics of Strasbourg, Williams, Bridgeport, and Lexington to unite with those of Berlin to build a church. And that's how the initial church came to be. On June 26, 1892, a meeting was held in the church which discussed the funding of the new church. By 1899, the church had sufficient funds to purchase the adjoining land from John Fennell for $7,500, and on September 30, 1900, Bishop T.J. Downing laid the cornerstone, and in late autumn of 1903, the church was completed. It had been planned by Arthur William Holmes of Toronto. Its date of construction, having built at a time when Kitchener was Berlin, makes this church one of the oldest churches and buildings in Kitchener, thus having significant historical and associative value. We also discovered that the architect of the church, Arthur William Holmes, was a contributing factor to its cultural heritage significance. He was an architect who devoted most of his career to designing buildings for the Roman Catholic Church in southern Ontario. He was born in London, England in 1863 and received his early education there. He then went on to train with George Edmund Street, the innovative master of the High Victorian style in England, and immigrated to Canada in 1885. Holmes's career was dominated in the field of church design for the Roman Catholic churches in southern Ontario until 1940. Some of his works include the Holy Family Roman Catholic Church at King Street West in Toronto, St. Paul's Roman Catholic Church on Queen Street East in Toronto, and at the time that this church was built, it could be considered as one of the grandest churches built west of Toronto. The contextual value relates to the physical, historical, functional, and visual link of the building. The building is located on a block surrounded by Duke Street, Yonge Street, Weber Street, and Ontario Street. The west portion of this block was historically owned by St. Mary's Roman Catholic Church, with historic buildings still present today. In addition, this church also has a strong visual presence, including important views on Duke Street and on Yonge Street, as a building that occupies a site that is slightly elevated on a hill. Because of this, the church has also been recognized as a landmark.
So should the committee decide to pass this motion, next steps is to contact the property owner and inform them that we would like to pursue designation of the property. We would then bring a notice of intention to designate back to the committee, and the designation process would proceed as usual from there. Should the committee vote to defer the designation process for these properties or determine that designation should not be pursued, they will remain listed on our municipal heritage register until January 1st, 2025, after which they will be removed and they cannot be relisted or designated for a period of 5 years. So we'd like to invite the committee at this time to ask us any questions that they may have or discuss amongst yourselves your thoughts on what the motion is.
Thank you, Adisha and Jessica. Just for our information and anyone who is following this discussion, what is the difference between the Ontario Heritage Act and what it says for listing and the designation, recommend for designation from the old to the new under Bill 23? Can you just review for us? I think I'm after business about criteria, and also we need to stress what will happen in 2 years and so on. So could you clarify that?
Sorry, so through you, Madam Chair, you're looking for the differences that the amendments provided in terms of designation process?
Right. In other words, the qualifications, what were demanded and now what is demanded. And then what's the process? They've been listed for all these years and now we're rushing to get them designated. Why?
So in terms of the designation process or the designation criteria, it was reorganized from what it previously was. It used to be divided into 3 different categories: your design/physical, historical/associative, and then the contextual. It's now the 9 different criteria. To list a building, 1 criteria of the 9 has to be met, and in order to designate it, now 2 criteria have to be met of the 9, where previously it was only the 1. In terms of why we're rushing this process now, it is because of that hard deadline of January 1st, 2025. The new amendments now state that any property that has been listed on the MHR has to be considered for designation or has to undergo the designation process by that time, or they will be removed from the MHR.
Thank you very much. Now I will open it to questions from members to ask Diksha or Jessica about any of the properties. I think it proves how important by the ratings we have and the criteria that you know, each one, if we're looking at the 9, each are 4 or greater of the 9 characteristics for listing and for designation. We only need 2, but in this case, we've got 4 out of 9, 5 out of 9, 6 out of 9, 8 out of 9. It really stands to show why these properties should be recognized for their heritage. So I will open the floor to questions. Seeing none, staff, do you have any recommendations here?
So through you, Madam Chair, and per the report, the recommendation is that pursuant to Section 29 of the Ontario Heritage Act, the cultural heritage value or interest of these properties be recognized and designation be pursued for the properties that we have reviewed.
Right. So I will read that recommendation then. That's in the staff report. And I will need someone to move it. So here we go. That pursuant to Section 29 of the Ontario Heritage Act, the cultural heritage value or interest be recognized and designation be pursued for the following properties: 24 Cortland Avenue East, 26 Cortland Avenue East, 2 to 22 Duke Street East, 70 Francis Street North, 54 to 68 King Street West, 144 to 150 King Street West, 58 Queen Street South, and 73 Yonge Street. Do I have a mover? Councillor Michaud. Any further questions? Although, do you have a question or a comment? Sorry,
Yeah.
Councillor Michaud.
I want to thank staff and all that's involved for putting this together and getting these houses on the list. There's some pretty significant properties here, and it's really nice to see that they're going to be preserved and kept in the downtown core, and we can build around them, I hope. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Michaud. Yes, Natalie. I'm Shannon.
Yeah, so my question was just in terms of the process of what falls next. What is the process? What does this look like for us, like reaching out to homeowners, or for you guys rather?
Thank you. So through you, Madam Chair, staff will be contacting the owners of these properties now through likely a formal letter or possibly email, and we'll open up the floor to discussion if the homeowners have any questions. Once that has been done, we would be working on preparing a notice of intention to designate report, which would come back to the committee. Timing for that will likely depend on how our discussions go with the homeowners, how easily they are to contact, and how many questions or concerns they have. Once the notice of intention to designate report is brought back to committee, it proceeds like the normal designation, where that report is reviewed by the committee before it's taken to council. Once it's taken to council and an ad is released, if council supports the recommendation to pursue designation, then there would be a 30-day appeal period per usual. And then once that appeal period is done, and if there's no appeal from the property owner, then we would take a designating bylaw back to council.
Through you, Madam Chair, sorry, just to add, our intention is to work with the property owner and informing them of the benefits of designation, both for them and for the community in general. So that's what we will be working towards if this motion is accepted by the committee.
Thank you for the question, and Diksha and Jessica. I'm assuming that you will send out a letter of correspondence. Will you give a timeline for the return answer?
Through you, Madam Chair, that's not something we have discussed at the time. I think the priority right now was to get these preliminary assessments done and brought them to the committee. So should this motion pass, that's our next step in terms of determining how to contact the property owner, how to work with them, and the timelines associated with that.
Thank you. Are there any further questions, comments? Who would be prepared to move this particular recommendation? Councillor Michaud. And now I'll call the question. All those in favor? Very good. Looks like it's unanimous. So it now can proceed under delegated approval authority. Thank you very much. I wonder if we have any other items under this particular item with Bill 23. I see the file folders came out. The next set of properties to be looked at. Jessica or Diksha, do you have comments on that?
Yes, through you, Madam Chair, that was something I wanted to point out as well. We have distributed your files back to you with the new property assignments. We've given each team 5 this round instead of the 6. And again, we've tried to keep them in areas that are close by where you guys live, just out of acknowledgement of the extra work that we're asking you to do. These we're asking back for in July. We know there is no July meeting, but if we are able to drop them off at the ground floor of City Hall early in the month at your convenience, that would be appreciated. And we would like to thank you guys again for the work, the extra workload that you're taking on to aid us with this.
Would we be doing this to discuss any of these properties in August then?
Through you, Madam Chair, we are still working through the properties from the first evaluation batch as well. We just want to keep the ball kind of rolling on this whole process. If we do think we're open to any comments or ideas from the committee, of course, in this process. If you guys would want to leave the evaluations until a later date, please let us know your thoughts on that.
All right. I think this is just kind of throwing it out at the moment, so we'll give it some thought then. And I also had an email from the communications person of the North Waterloo branch of the Architectural Conservancy of Ontario here in Kitchener, and there was an offer from the group that if we needed extra help in looking at the properties, they would have people available to help us. So I'll let you consider that as well. Thank you. Any other comments on this? Fine. Thank you very much then. Going to information items, the heritage permit tracking sheet. Any comments on that from staff?
Through you, Madam Chair, no.
Thank you. Are there any other comments, recommendations? Yes, Peter.
Just a quick question on a related topic. Recently in the record, there was reporting on the development which is on Lancaster Street, heading towards Bridgeport, the fairly substantial new redevelopment there. And previously in front of the committee, we had seen that there was a proposal to relocate the 2 sort of twin houses there down the hill into a new location in Bridgeport. The paper, I believe, said that all the houses on the site were going to be demolished, and I just wondered whether it's still in the works that those buildings are going to be relocated, or is the paper wrong?
Through you, Madam Chair, as part of the official plan application, the official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment applications for both 528 to 550 Lancaster as well as 26 Bridge, the staff recommendation was to require the developer to relocate those existing buildings from 528 Lancaster to 26 Bridge. However, the ultimate recommendation that was approved by council did not require the relocations of those buildings, and therefore they would be demolished.
Thank you. That's sad. Thank you.
Yes, I have to agree with you, Peter. It's very sad, and for me, it was quite a disappointment when I think of the time spent on the part of our heritage staff to look at the heritage impact assessments, to write the reports, and the time spent by the volunteers, the Heritage Kitchener, and working in good faith that we were going to have a positive result for two significant properties in Bridgeport. Anyway, any other comments or questions on that? Thank you very much. And thank you to staff for all your work and time spent researching and making sure we have everything. And I wish you well in your correspondence with the owners of the properties that we have approved for heritage conservation today. So without further ado, who would like to move adjournment of the meeting? Andrew would. Thank you very much. We'll see you in August.